Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. EU made simple. Hey guys, my name's Connor. If you're new, let's learn about another scenario that is not as implausible as it used to be, which is depressing. Preemptive like, defending Europe without the US, is it possible? Let's find out. I mean, the answer is yes, of course it's possible.
Sponsored by MyHeritage. Russia has been ramping up its military for 3 consecutive years, building a powerful army with proven combat experience. Meanwhile, Europe has faced decades of military...
Sorry, what are the barrels for? Is that fuel?
With proven combat experience. Meanwhile, Europe has faced decades of military decline. Although defense spending is on the rise, the only European force...
We're at almost $1 trillion? Jesus Christ.
...with real... Although defense spending is on the rise, the only European force with real battlefield experience is Ukraine.
Oh,
Europe's main
Jesus Christ.
Strategic advantage, though, US deterrence. With 100,000 American troops stationed across the continent and a nuclear umbrella, this presence has long been a formidable counter to Russian aggression. But could this be changing?
We're also here today to directly and unambiguously express that stark strategic realities prevent the United States of America from being primarily focused on the security of Europe.
And that's putting it mildly. Trump has repeatedly flirted with the idea of pulling US troops out of Europe, especially from Germany, and even hinted at leaving NATO during his previous presidency. Meanwhile, the likely new German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, vows independence from Trump's America, warning that NATO may soon be dead. Therefore, in this video, we'll explore the reality of the Russian threat to...
I would say a lot of this stuff is ridiculous, but after the meeting with Zelensky and Trump, I can't even, like, I'm at loss for words. I can't even say none of this is impossible anymore.
Therefore, in this video, we'll explore the reality of the Russian threat today, the current state of US military presence in Europe, and what Europe would need to defend itself if America pulled out for good. For Russia, the war in Ukraine has been costly, but the Kremlin continues to go all in, spending billions of dollars and mobilizing everything from military factories to social media disinformation. The result? A military that's bigger, meaner, and more battle-hardened than the one that stormed into Ukraine in 2022. By the end of last year, Russia had 700,000 troops in Ukraine, far more than 2022. And in just 1 year, Russia produced 1,500 battle tanks, a 220% increase compared to 2022.
Guys, one of the things I've thought about recently, no expert here, obviously, as you guys know, so let me know if I'm wrong. But when it comes to numbers on paper, take China, for example. Giant. On paper, China is maybe the most powerful, maybe the US and China, most powerful militaries, right? But China doesn't have a lot of recent military action. You know, I believe China fought Vietnam after we failed, or after we fought Vietnam. But my point is here is that 2 countries in the world have had recent experience with top tier military equipment, and that is Russia and Ukraine. And in my opinion, apart from minerals or just wanting to save Ukraine because it's right, now you have Ukraine, who is a battle-hardened with 21st century battle experience, which makes Ukraine a far more important ally than before. You know, and so you have Ukraine and Russia, who have had now years of experience with modern 21st century European First World warfare, right? And so that's another reason as to why Ukraine cannot fall. Because if they do, not only will Russia gain a lot of advantages from just having Ukraine, but they'll also be the only one left that has serious 21st century warfare experience. That's my main point. Do you know what I mean?
They also cranked out 5,700 armored vehicles, a 50% boost, and 1,800 long-range loitering munitions, a staggering 435% jump. Oh, and those drones they used to borrow from Iran? Not anymore. Russia is now producing its own. And then there's military spending, where Russia is, quite frankly, off the charts. The International Institute for Strategic Studies estimated Russia's military budget last year at $145 billion, or 6.7% of its GDP. That's over 40% more than the year before. Meanwhile, Europe's combined defense spending in 2024 was $457 billion. Impressive. Until you dig a little deeper. If you calculate Russia's spending in purchasing power parity, adjusting for the fact that things are a lot cheaper in Russia, the Kremlin's military budget jumps to a staggering $460 billion. And for the first time in a very long time, Russia is outspending all of Europe.
Well, if you switch Chinese spending to PPP as well, then they're going to go very much up as well. Also, this only matters for domestic production, right? If you rely in any way on foreign military investment or military products, then you can't use PPP for that, can you?
Insane, right? And what makes this even scarier, Russia operates under a single command and speaks one language. Us Europeans, a very different story. NATO and several European countries believe Russia could be ready to attack a NATO country within 3 to 10 years, or even sooner. There's even a massive military exercise in Belarus this summer, simulating conflict with NATO, and that will showcase Russia's combat readiness. And if they can pull this off during an ongoing war, Europe should pay attention. But as said before, Europe has one big deterrence: NATO and the USA. But before we look into that, have you ever wondered about your family's past? That's where today's...
We're going to watch through the sponsor, obviously. You guys can fast forward if you want. I'm watching his video, or EU Made Simple video. I'm going to watch through it. If there are any promo codes or links that are provided, original link top of the description. I'm watching their video. Just if you're interested and you learn it here, please use their stuff. I just want to say first that a major thing, even more than its military capabilities, non-nuclear capabilities, is the nuclear capability of the USA in NATO. I believe that France is the only nuclear country in Europe that can deploy its own nuclear weapons. I know the United Kingdom has nuclear weapons, but I've learned recently, in the past 2 weeks, I learned that all ballistic missile, that all all UK missiles. Let me start over. All United Kingdom nuclear weapons rely on American-made rockets to deliver them. And so if you get rid of American support, then there goes the way to deliver UK nuclear weapons. And so you're going to have to deliver them by plane, which is insanely downgraded than by rocket. And so France is your last nuclear power nation in Europe that can actually deploy nuclear weapons without the USA. And so I think Europe needs to fix that issue, you know? I misspoke 3 times there, sorry.
Sponsor, MyHeritage, comes in. A true game changer in discovering your roots. When I first tried it, all I did was enter basic information about my parents and grandparents. And boom, my family tree started unfolding before my eyes. I uncovered my great-grandparents and traced generations I never knew existed. All easily done with MyHeritage's intuitive platform and its 20 billion historical records. What's more, I uncovered some fascinating family connections. For instance, I found ancestors with roots in Turkey and Indonesia. Turns out the Dutch colonial history in Indonesia wasn't just something I learned in school. It's part of my very own story. And here's the best part. I added my first cousin twice removed to my family tree, and he reached out to me. And now we're collaborating on our own combined family tree.
That's awesome.
MyHeritage also has incredible features to bring your family history to life. I found this very old family photo of my great uncle, and their tools let me repair, colorize, enhance, and even animate it. It's like stepping back in time.
I don't like the animation part, man. It's like I don't want to see movements that they didn't make in Forget
and
it.
here's the exciting part. You can try it all out with a 14-day free trial. So, drive into your family's past today and uncover stories you never knew existed. Check out the link in the description below. Back to the video, where we're breaking down just how big America's deterrence in Europe really is. First, there's US support for Ukraine. Since February 2022, the US has provided 114 billion euros in financial, military, and humanitarian aid, an average of 38 billion euros per year. Crucially, this includes advanced American weapon systems and the powerful message that the US stands firmly with Ukraine. The US also has around 100,000 troops stationed across Europe.
Really?
Most of them are in Germany, with
We have 35,000 soldiers, 24/7, 365 in Germany. I would have expected maybe like 35K for all of Europe. That's higher than I thought.
smaller but significant numbers in Italy, the UK, Poland, and Spain. The idea is very simple. If Russia were to attack a NATO country, those 100,000 troops would be reinforced fast by up to 200,000 more, mainly US armored units tailor-made for the Eastern European battlefield. That's a pretty solid force, but it doesn't stop there. The real ace up Europe's sleeve? US nuclear bombs?
Yeah, exactly. And I hope he mentions the fact that, I hope it was correct that I learned that France is the only country. I feel like you need a leader in the EU. I'm not saying someone that decides everything, but someone who has capability on their own. And I believe the UK, again, maybe they can deliver it by plane, but does rely on US rockets. I'm pretty sure France is the only one that is truly independent in their nuclear deterrence.
During the Cold War, the US had over 7,000 nuclear warheads stored all across Europe. Today, that number is much lower, but still significant. Although exact numbers are classified, experts estimate about 100 US nuclear bombs are currently stored at 6 sites, 2 in Italy and 1 each in Turkey, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. That's serious deterrent. So, that is the status quo. But with a new Trump administration in place, things could change.
Now is the time to invest, because you can't make an assumption that America's presence will last forever.
Germany's entire defense is subsidized by the American taxpayer. There are thousands...
Okay, for Pete Hegseth here, I kind of agree with him.
Things could change.
Now is the time to invest, because you can't make an assumption that America's presence will last forever.
I think that's a fine statement, actually, and is in the European best interest. So I'm saying this, but I agree with Pete Hegseth there.
Germany's entire defense is subsidized by the American taxpayer. There are thousands upon thousands of American troops in Germany today.
He might make some good points, but something about J.D. Vance just rubs me the wrong way.
Do you think that the American taxpayer is going to stand for that if you get thrown in jail in Germany for posting a mean tweet? Of course they're not.
Okay, yeah. Something with J.D. Vance is like even if he's trying to give a good point, it comes across as very unfriendly, and I don't like that.
Administration definitely isn't known for its strong Atlanticist views. In fact, they
Sorry, who?
In Germany for posting a mean tweet?
Sorry.
Of course they're not.
The new administration definitely isn't known for its strong Atlanticist views. In fact, they've made it pretty clear that America's days as Europe's security blanket might be numbered. So, while still unlikely, what happens if the US pulls out entirely, leaving Europe to defend itself?
Just
Could
France.
Europe step up and fill the gap? First, let's take a look at Ukraine. And here, there are 2 scenarios. In the first scenario, there's no peace deal, and Ukraine keeps on fighting. From a purely financial perspective, Europe could replace US support without too much trouble. To match US aid to Ukraine, the EU would only need to spend an additional 0.22% of its GDP. That's not a huge ask. The second scenario is trickier. Ukraine accepts a US-Russia peace deal, and Europe...
The difficult part about that is 0.22% doesn't sound much, but it's about who forks over that 0.22%. Because 0.22% to the EU is a lot to a single country. And so I guess if you spread it out, it won't be that much.
The second scenario
If I'm
is
wrong,
trickier.
tell me.
Ukraine accepts a US-Russia peace deal, and Europe needs to secure the border with peacekeepers, an estimated 150,000 troops, likely without US help. Meanwhile, Russia would likely continue its military buildup, posing a serious threat to all of Europe. And this points to the real problem: replacing American troops in Europe if they leave. To match the fighting power of 300,000 US troops, Europe would need to significantly boost its military strength, focusing on mechanized and armored forces. On paper, Europe, including the UK, has 1.5 million active duty military personnel. Sounds super impressive, right? But they're scattered across 28 national armies, each with its own chain of command.
For one country, that's very impressive.
The combat power of 300,000 US troops is far greater than the same number of European troops divided among different national forces. US troops operate as large cohesive corps with unified command structures and unmatched strategic enablers, like strategic aviation and space assets, things that Europe simply doesn't have. For example, to prevent a rapid Russian breakthrough in the Baltics, NATO would need at least 1,400 tanks, 2,000 infantry fighting vehicles, and 700 artillery pieces. That's more than the combined land forces of France, Germany, Italy, and the UK. The bottom line, it's not just about replacing numbers. It's about matching firepower, unity, and strategic.
Another thing I'd like to know your guys' opinion on, because I'm not sure. I think we often want to see a military alliance as perfectly sealed, right? But when an actual war breaks out, will everyone come to the defense as you'd imagine, you know? And I'd like to hear any thoughts on that.
And right now, Europe is nowhere near ready. And then there's the big one, nuclear deterrence. If the US were to dismantle its 6 nuclear bases in Europe, it would leave a massive gap in Europe's defense. But Europe isn't entirely defenseless. France and the UK have their own nuclear arsenals, though nowhere near as many warheads as the US or Russia for that matter. However, things are shifting. French President Macron and Germany's likely next Chancellor Friedrich Merz are already discussing the possibility of sharing nuclear capabilities. This could even mean storing French nukes on German soil, aiming to create a European nuclear shield, independent of the US. But building a credible nuclear deterrent takes time. And in the short term, Europe simply can't replace the security provided by the US nuclear presence. So, the bottom line is clear. Europe cannot replace the US presence in the short term. But in the long run, that's a different story. With the right investments and strategic planning, Europe could achieve full military independence. And that brings us to a crucial crossroads. Europe must make a choice. Option 1. Build up national armies and rapidly enhance military coordination throughout Europe. Without better coordination, defense costs will skyrocket, and European national efforts won't be enough to deter the Russian military. Or option 2, create a unified European army, an additional force of at least 200,000 soldiers supplied by national armies to replace US presence in Europe.
We must build the armed forces of Europe so that Europe's future depends only on Europeans, and decisions about Europe are made in Europe.
Whichever path Europe chooses, one thing is certain. It will require a lot of money. Defense spending will need to rise significantly from the current 2% of GDP. Initial estimates suggest an increase of about 250 billion euros annually, raising the total to around 3.5% of GDP. And to make this affordable and economical, European scale procurement is essential to lower military production costs. German leadership will also be critical. Alone, they would need to increase its defense budget from 80 billion euros to 140 billion euros, about 3.5% of its GDP, on top of joint EU funding. Right now, German military capabilities fall short of NATO commitments. For example, Germany's pledge to provide NATO with 2 divisions, around 40,000 troops, by 2025 and 2027, is already facing serious setbacks. Here's my take. If Europe wants real deterrence and a seat at the table with the big boys, it has to act as one. Looking at the options, both have potential. But the second one offers far more advantages. By building
but also seems tougher.
a unified European army, mass procurement becomes easier and cheaper when Europe buys as one. Standardization also gets a massive boost. Instead of juggling 17 different types of tanks across national armies, a unified force could streamline to just one. A unified command under a single structure as a separate pillar within NATO would be far more effective than fragmented national variants. But getting to option 2 would require massive political will and a complete overhaul of the EU's defense structure. This won't happen overnight. Of course, there are many more problems, and if you want to know more about how this could play out, check out our previous video, linked here, where we go into the topic a lot deeper. And don't miss out the chance to explore your family roots. Sign up for a 14-day free trial of MyHeritage today. And to support us further, consider joining us on Patreon. Every contribution helps us bring you more in-depth discussions on Europe's future.
It's a great video, as always, from EU Made Simple. Despite the danger that the most recent U.S. attitude towards Europe and NATO and Russia and Ukraine, despite how bad, for lack of a better term, that is, I think a more abrupt approach that the U.S. Took, although I disagree with it, and most of Europe disagrees with it, it could actually save, or it could actually give that push towards a free, independent Europe militarily that a more gradual decline of U.S. support could have. And so that might be the I can't predict the future, but the way the U.S. is insanely reacting towards the war in Ukraine and to NATO right now could actually give that little boost to Europe to actually make this a reality. So it's not great, but it could promote that feeling and make it a reality. So love y'all. Would appreciate any comments down below. If you disagree with anything I say, please tell me. Answer any of my questions I have. You guys are always awesome with that. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye, guys.